The rift in the sky shimmered faintly as Heman stared at its retreating light. Skeletor's magic was dangerous, but this was something entirely different. The portal hadn't just pulled Batman into Eternia, it had disrupted the natural balance of their world. The Whispering Woods, usually alive with a hum of magic, now felt unnervingly still, as if the forest itself held its breath. Heman looked at the scorched ground where the battle had unfolded. Batman's technology, his methods, they were unlike anything Heman had ever encountered. Eternia was a world of swords and sorcery, where strength and courage were the ultimate virtues. But Batman was different. His mind was his weapon, sharp and calculating. Heman couldn't deny his respect for the man, but he also couldn't shake his wariness. He turned to the villagers who had cautiously emerged from the forest's edges. Their faces were a mixture of awe and fear, their eyes darting between Heman and the fading portal. "Go back to your homes," Heman commanded gently. "This threat has passed, but Skeletor won't stop. Be vigilant." The villagers nodded, murmuring their thanks before retreating. Heman watched them go, his thoughts clouded. Welcome to Timeless Battles. Please hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and engage massively. Your opinion means the world to us. Skeletor's appearance was no coincidence. The Dark Sorcerer had a knack for exploiting chaos, and the arrival of Batman was the kind of anomaly Skeletor thrived on. Far away, in the heart of Eternia's mystic mountains, Skeletor stood before his cauldron, its swirling green mist reflecting his skeletal visage. His lair was a cavernous chamber carved into the mountainside, its walls adorned with ancient runes and grotesque statues. Dark energy crackled in the air, feeding off the malevolent presence of its master. Skeletor paced, his bony fingers gripping the Havoc staff tightly. "So, a new player enters the game," he mused aloud, his voice echoing off the cavern walls. "A man of science in a land of magic. How interesting!" He waved his staff over the cauldron, and an image of Batman appeared in the swirling mist. Skeletor studied him intently, his mind racing with possibilities. "This outsider could be a powerful ally," Skeletor said, a sinister grin spreading across his face. "Or a dangerous foe. Either way, he is an opportunity." He turned to his minions, Batman, Evelyn, and Trapjaw, who stood at attention near the chamber's entrance. "Find him," Skeletor commanded. "Bring him to me alive. I want to see what this Batman is capable of." Evelyn stepped forward, her dark eyes gleaming. "And what of Heman? Surely he will intervene." Skeletor's grin widened. "Let him try. By the time I'm done, both of them will kneel before me." Meanwhile, Batman found himself deep in Eternia's Whispering Woods, his keen senses on high alert. The forest was unlike anything he had encountered in Gotham, a living, breathing entity imbued with magic. The trees whispered secrets he couldn't understand, their leaves glowing faintly in the dim light. He moved cautiously, his every step measured. His encounter with Heman had left him unsettled. The man was a powerhouse, a warrior forged in battle, but there was a nobility to him, a sense of duty that Batman recognized in himself. As he walked, Batman's mind raced. He needed a way back to Gotham, but the portal he had come through was gone. His gadgets, advanced as they were, couldn't replicate the kind of magic he had witnessed. Suddenly, a rustling in the underbrush caught his attention. He spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for a batarang. Out of the shadows stepped a creature that could only be described as monstrous, a hulking beast with fur like flame and eyes that burned with an unnatural light. "Batman," the creature growled, its voice guttural and menacing. "Skeletor sends his regards." Before Batman could respond, Batman lunged. His claws slashed through the air, narrowly missing Batman, who rolled to the side and threw a smoke bomb. The area filled with thick gray smoke, momentarily disorienting Batman. Batman didn't hesitate. He activated his grappling hook, swinging up into the trees. From his vantage point, he observed the beast, calculating its movements. Batman was strong, but he was also impulsive, a weakness Batman could exploit. He dropped down silently behind Batman, delivering a precise strike to the creature's pressure points. Batman roared in pain, swinging wildly. But Batman was already gone, blending into the shadows. "You think you can hide from me?" Batman snarled. "You're in my domain now." But Batman was always 10 steps ahead. Using a sonic emitter from his utility belt, he created a high-pitched frequency that disoriented Batman further. The creature stumbled, clutching its ears, giving Batman the opening he needed. With a swift motion, he incapacitated Batman, binding him with reinforced cables. "Tell Skeletor," Batman said coldly, "that I'm not interested in being his pawn." He disappeared into the forest, leaving Batman struggling against his bonds. As night fell over Eternia, Heman stood on the battlements of Castle Grayskull, gazing out at the horizon. The castle's guardian, the sorceress, appeared beside him, her ethereal presence a comforting beacon in the growing darkness. "The rift has destabilized the balance of our world," the sorceress said, her voice calm but tinged with concern. "This outsider, this Batman, carries the weight of another realm's chaos." Heman nodded, his expression grim. "He's not evil, but he's dangerous. His methods, they're unlike anything we've seen. Perhaps that is why he was brought here," the sorceress replied. "To challenge your perspective. To remind you that strength alone is not always enough." Heman frowned. "You're suggesting I trust him? I'm suggesting you understand him," the sorceress said. "He fights for justice, just as you do, but his world has shaped him differently." Their conversation was interrupted by a distant explosion. Heman turned, his hand instinctively reaching for his sword. "Skeletor," he muttered. The sorceress placed a hand on his shoulder. "Go, but be careful, Heman. The threads of fate are delicate, and this battle is not as simple as it seems." The explosion was Skeletor's doing, a deliberate act of chaos meant to lure both Heman and Batman into his trap. The dark sorcerer stood in a clearing, his staff glowing with malevolent energy. Around him, his minions formed a protective circle, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. Heman arrived first, his sword drawn and ready. "Enough games, Skeletor," he shouted. "This ends now." Skeletor laughed, his voice dripping with mockery. "Oh, Heman, you're so predictable. Always charging in without thinking. But this time, you're not the only one I've invited to the party." Batman emerged from the shadows, his cape billowing in the wind. His eyes locked onto Skeletor, then shifted briefly to Heman. "You couldn't resist, could you?" Batman said dryly. Heman scowled. "I could say the same to you." "Enough chatter," Skeletor snapped, slamming his staff into the ground. Dark magic erupted from the earth, creating a swirling vortex that began to pull at everything around it. Heman and Batman braced themselves, their instincts kicking in as the battle began. Skeletor's minions attacked, swarming Heman and Batman with relentless ferocity. Heman's sword cut through the onslaught with ease, each swing a testament to his unmatched strength. Batman, meanwhile, used his gadgets and agility to outmaneuver his foes, striking with precision and retreating before they could retaliate. The two warriors fought back to back, their movements surprisingly synchronized despite their differences. "Not bad for a man in a cape," Heman said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "You're not so bad yourself," Batman replied, his tone begrudgingly respectful. As they fought, Skeletor watched from the sidelines, his grin widening. This was exactly what he wanted, to push them to their limits, to see how far they would go. But Skeletor had underestimated them. Together, Heman and Batman turned the tide of the battle, their combined efforts overwhelming Skeletor's forces. Realizing he was outmatched, Skeletor unleashed his final weapon. A monstrous creature born of dark magic, its massive form towering over the battlefield. Heman charged at the beast, his sword blazing with light. Batman, meanwhile, used his grappling hook to climb onto the creature's back, planting explosive devices along its spine. Now, Batman shouted. Heman delivered a powerful blow to the creature's chest, and the explosives detonated simultaneously. The beast let out a deafening roar before collapsing, its body disintegrating into ash. Skeletor cursed under his breath, retreating into the shadows. "This isn't over," he hissed before disappearing. As the dust settled, Heman and Batman stood amidst the wreckage, their breathing heavy but their resolve unbroken. "Not bad," Heman said, offering a rare smile. "You're not so bad yourself," Batman replied, his tone lighter than before. For a moment there was peace, but both men knew it was only temporary.